Imagine standing in the center of a burning city. Smoke fills the air, screams echo from every street, soldiers trample the ground, and everything you once called home collapses into dust. Most men in this moment would break. They would lose themselves in fear, in rage, in despair. But there was one man who stood in the center of this storm and did not shatter. His name was Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome and a philosopher whose rule for life has the power to make any man unshakable in chaos. Marcus lived not in an age of comfort, but in an age of plague, betrayal, and endless war. Every morning he woke knowing that death surrounded him, that the empire he carried on his shoulders could crumble with one wrong step. And yet, he wrote words so calm, so steady, so unyielding that they survive to this day as a map for men who refuse to be broken. What Marcus discovered is something most people today will never grasp. We live in a world that hides from suffering, a culture that medicates pain, distracts itself with noise, and runs from the silence of its own soul. But Marcus understood a truth so sharp it cuts through centuries. Chaos does not destroy you. Your reaction to chaos does. And if you can master this one rule, the very rule Marcus Aurelius used to remain unshaken as the world burned around him, then no betrayal, no crisis, no storm of life will ever have the power to control you again. The rule that Marcus Aurelius lived by is deceptively simple, but it is the dividing line between men who crumble and men who rise. You cannot control the world, but you can always control your mind. This sounds almost too obvious at first, like a shallow motivational quote on a poster. But Marcus meant something far deeper. He wasn't speaking about optimism or pretending things are fine when they aren't. He was speaking about a radical shift in power, the understanding that no external event, not betrayal, not death, not failure, has authority over your inner state unless you hand it that authority. This was not theory for him. Marcus Aurelius was emperor at a time when the Roman Empire was under siege from all sides. His reign was scarred by the Antonine Plague, which killed millions. His generals betrayed him. His own son would later disgrace everything he had built. And yet, in his private writings, which he never intended the world to see, he kept returning to the same principle. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But what does this actually mean? Imagine two men standing in the same storm. The first curses the wind, shakes his fist at the heavens, and collapses under the weight of what he cannot change. The second man feels the same storm whip against his face, but he does not resist it. He focuses only on what is within his control, his breath, his posture, his response. One man drowns, the other stands unshaken. The difference is not the storm. It is the mind. Marcus's rule is not about denial. He never told himself the plague wasn't real. He never pretended Rome wasn't at risk. Instead, he practiced what the Stoics called the discipline of perception, training himself to see events as neutral, stripped of the story his fear or anger wanted to attach to them. In his eyes, an enemy's betrayal was not a tragedy. It was simply an event, like rain falling. What mattered was how he chose to interpret it. This is where most modern men fail. We are trained from birth to think the world owes us safety. We are raised to believe that if we work hard enough, love deeply enough, pray strongly enough, then life will spare us from tragedy. But when tragedy comes, and it always comes, most men shatter because they built their identity on the illusion that the outside world can ever be controlled. Marcus Aurelius knew this illusion was death. He tore it out at the root. Think about the modern man who loses his job. To him, his entire sense of worth collapses. He spirals into despair, not because unemployment itself destroys him, but because he never learned how to anchor his mind independently from external circumstances. Compare that to Marcus, who could wake each morning knowing half the empire despised him, that his closest allies plotted behind his back, that the gods themselves seemed to punish Rome with plague, and still write words like, "If you are pained by anything external, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it." This is the heart of his rule. Chaos itself is not the enemy. Your judgment of chaos is. The plague did not weaken Marcus. The wars did not break him. His enemies did not destroy him. The only force that could have ruined him was his own perception, and he refused to let it. There's a haunting kind of freedom in this realization. If the world cannot be controlled, then the world cannot enslave you. No insult, no loss, No injustice has the power to make you weak unless you agree to it. This is why Marcus Aurelius' words cut so deeply, because he removes every excuse you cling to. You can no longer say, "It was circumstances that broke me." The truth is harder. It was your surrender to those circumstances. This is why his writings still disturb us today. Because if Marcus is right, if control of the mind is always possible, no matter how unbearable life becomes, then the responsibility falls entirely on us. We are not victims of life. We are victims of our own unwillingness to master ourselves. The genius of Marcus Aurelius' rule is not that it belonged to the ancient world. It belongs here in ours. A world that looks different on the surface, yet at its core is still chaos disguised as order. We may not live under Roman legions, but we live under the same storms: betrayal, uncertainty, fear, humiliation. The faces have changed, but the human soul still trembles in the same way. Let's start with relationships. Today, one of the deepest wounds for men is rejection. The sense of not being wanted, not being valued, not being chosen. A man pours himself into a woman, or perhaps he never even dares to approach, and when she pulls away or turns to another, he feels destroyed. His worth collapses because he tied his identity to something he never controlled: her response. This is where Marcus speaks directly across centuries. He would tell you, her choice was never yours to command. You cannot control her love, her loyalty, her desire. What you can control is your posture in the face of it. Do you crumble, begging for what is no longer given? Or do you remain unshaken, rooted in the one thing that cannot be taken from you: your own mind, your own judgment? This is why strong men remain magnetic. A man who does not beg, who does not collapse under rejection, who holds his composure in silence while others scream, he becomes the rarest thing in the modern world. He becomes unignorable. Women, whether they admit it or not, instinctively recognize the difference between a man owned by external chaos and a man who owns himself. Now think about society. We are living in an era where weakness is encouraged, where comfort is sold as the highest good, where outrage is manufactured to keep you distracted. Every screen you look at begs for your attention, pulls at your emotions, demands you respond. The average man is tossed like a leaf in the wind, furious at politics, broken by the news, consumed by envy on social media. He is enslaved by forces that don't even know his name. Marcus Aurelius would laugh at this enslavement. Not out of cruelty, but because he knew the absurdity of it. The Roman emperor who ruled the known world still believed he controlled nothing outside his own thoughts. And yet today, the average man, with his small life, his rented apartment, his office cubicle, imagines he can control everything but himself. He is furious when strangers online disagree with him. He is shattered when his post gets ignored. He is crushed by an algorithm. But here is the truth Marcus teaches. Society is chaos wearing a mask of order. It will always insult you, always betray you, always pull the ground out from under your feet. If you let it, you will live your whole life as a puppet of forces outside you. If you master yourself, those same forces lose their grip. The news cannot dictate your state of mind. The scrolling cannot drain your soul. You become like a stone in the river. The current rushes, but you remain unmoved. And then there is the deepest battlefield, the inner life. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about death because he lived surrounded by it. Plague stalked his empire, and every morning he woke knowing this day might be his last. Instead of running from this thought, he embraced it. He used it to sharpen himself. You could leave life right now, he wrote. Let that determine what you do and say and think. What does this mean for you? It means stop living as though you can control the length of your days. You cannot. Stop living as though life owes you decades. It doesn't. The only thing you control is what you do with the moment in your hand right now. This is why Marcus was unshakable, because he refused to waste his power chasing illusions, the illusion of control over women, over society, over death. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, how much of your suffering comes not from reality, but from your refusal to accept reality? How much of your pain is born not from what happened, but from your insistence that it should not have happened? This is where Marcus Aurelius delivers the final blow. Life does not care about your expectations. The world will not rearrange itself to match your fragile hopes. Chaos will come, in your relationships, in your society, in your own body. The only question is whether you meet it as a slave or as a sovereign. Imagine two men walking into the same crisis. One loses his job and spirals into despair, screaming that life is unfair. The other loses his job and calmly asks, "What is still in my control? My discipline, my focus, my willingness to rebuild." The first collapses, the second hardens. This is Marcus's rule alive today. Imagine two men in heartbreak. One begs, texts, pleads, humiliates himself for the return of what is already gone. The other feels the same pain, but does not bow. He grieves, but he does not surrender his dignity. Which man do you think becomes stronger? Which man do you think Marcus would call free? Marcus Aurelius's rule was never about retreating from the world. It was about conquering the only territory that is truly yours, your mind. And once you conquer that, everything outside loses its ability to dominate you. Society cannot make you weak. Rejection cannot make you worthless. Death cannot make you afraid. This is how you become unshakable in chaos. Not by controlling the storm, but by mastering the place where the storm lands, inside you. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations to impress anyone. They were private notes, reminders to himself of how to stand tall when everything tried to pull him down. If you strip them to their core, they read like battlefield orders for the soul. And that is what you need now, not soft advice, but commands that leave no room for weakness. The first lesson: you owe nothing to chaos. When the world tries to break you, remember that it only has as much power as you surrender to it. Pain will come, betrayal will come, failure will come. But pain is not humiliation. Betrayal is not the end. Failure is not death. They only become chains when you agree to let them bind you. Stand firm. Refuse to bow to storms that are not yours to command. The second lesson: never chase what does not belong to your control. When you beg for love, you make yourself a slave. When you obsess over outcomes, you forfeit your dignity. Marcus understood that the most dangerous chains are the invisible ones we wrap around ourselves. Chains made of craving, of needing approval, of demanding certainty. Break them. Do not chase what runs from you. Do not kneel before what you cannot own. The third lesson: guard your judgment as your fortress. Marcus wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." This was his way of saying, every time you surrender your perspective to anger, envy, or despair, you stain your own spirit. The event is nothing, your judgment of it is everything. Guard it as you would guard a city under siege. Because once your judgment falls, everything else will follow. The fourth lesson: do not waste your life fighting shadows. Most men live in endless war with illusions. They fight against how things should be, instead of how they are. They rage at traffic, at politics, at the past. Marcus knew this was the path of the broken. He turned instead to what remained in his grasp: his actions, his words, his choices in the moment. If you waste your fire on shadows, you will have nothing left when the real enemy arrives. The fifth lesson: embrace death as your teacher. Marcus stared at death every day, not to terrify himself, but to free himself. He wrote, "You could leave life right now." That wasn't despair. It was urgency. It was clarity. When you accept death, you stop wasting time. You stop living like tomorrow is guaranteed. You stop letting petty fears own you. If you can look at death and remain unafraid, then nothing in life can touch you. The sixth lesson: be unmoved in the face of insult. In Rome, as now, men were mocked, lied about, slandered. Marcus was not spared, even as emperor. His answer was silence. His strength was indifference. Because what is an insult, really? It is sound, breath shaped into words. It cannot break your bones. It cannot touch your soul. To be shattered by insult is to hand your enemies exactly what they want. Let their words fall like dust. The seventh lesson: do not confuse comfort with strength. Modern men are addicted to comfort, soft beds, constant entertainment, endless distraction. But Marcus knew comfort breeds fragility. Strength is forged in discomfort, in waking early, in enduring pain without complaint, in carrying burdens without asking for pity. If you chase comfort, you will break the first time the world denies it to you. If you embrace hardship, you will laugh when others collapse. The eighth lesson: rule yourself or you will be ruled. This is the law Marcus lived by. If you do not master your appetites, your emotions, your impulses, they will master you. and a man ruled by his desires is no man at all. He is a slave dressed in human form. Rule yourself. Hold the line. Refuse to let your weaker nature sit on the throne of your soul. These are not gentle lessons. They are weapons, and they cut deeply because they leave no room for excuses. Marcus Aurelius believed that every man holds the key to his own prison. Most will never use it. They will spend their lives rattling the bars, crying out against fate, blaming women, blaming society, blaming the gods. And they will die as slaves. But the man who takes these rules into his marrow becomes something else entirely. He becomes untouchable. Chaos rages around him, but it cannot move him. Rejection wounds him, but it cannot define him. Death stalks him, but it cannot paralyze him. This is what Marcus meant by strength. Not the strength to conquer the world, but the strength to remain free while the world collapses. The world has always been chaos. Rome burned, empires crumbled, plagues swept across continents. Today the flames are different. Financial collapse, digital addiction, political unrest, the silent loneliness of modern life. But the truth Marcus Aurelius carved into his soul has not changed. You do not control the storm. You only control how you stand within it. This is the law of existence, merciless and yet liberating. The weak man will always fight against it, thrashing against the waves, screaming that life is unfair. And in his struggle, he will drown. The strong man learns to stand still. He does not demand that the water calm itself. He masters only his breath, his mind, his heart. And because of this, he walks out alive when others vanish beneath the tide. Marcus Aurelius's words were not written for philosophers sitting in ivory towers. They were written by a man on the edge of collapse, a ruler watching his empire fracture, a father burying his children, a human being staring down death. He understood suffering not as an idea, but as a daily companion. And yet he chose to live by one unbreakable rule. No matter the storm, the mind remains free. Ask yourself now, how much of your life have you wasted trying to control what was never yours? How many hours poured into fear, into outrage, into obsession over what others think of you? How many times have you bent your spine, begging for certainty in a world that only offers chaos? Marcus would tell you the same truth he told himself in the dark hours of night. None of it belongs to you. Not the approval of others. Not the shifting tides of society. Not the length of your days. All that belongs to you is the fortress of your mind. Guard it. Rule it. Live by it. Because one day, the storm will come for you too. It may arrive as heartbreak. It may arrive as betrayal. It may arrive as the quiet knock of death at your door. You will not escape it, but you can meet it on your feet, unbroken, unshaken, sovereign in spirit. And when the storm passes, as all storms do, you will remain. This was Marcus Aurelius's truth. It is merciless, it is simple, and it is eternal. You cannot control the world. You can only control yourself. And in that control lies the only freedom any man will ever know.